like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Palladino, roll call.
Here.
Dr. Genovese,
Here.
Dr. Lilliston, Dr. Liu,
Here.
Mr. Peters, Dr. Resnick,
Here.
Mr. Swicky,
Here.
Ms. Williams-Galliano,
Present.
Dr. Wilson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Please join me in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The New Jersey Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Hopewell Valley Regional Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof communicated to the Hopewell Valley News, the Times, and the Trentonian on January 3rd, 2023. This meeting notice was also sent to Comcast Cable and Verizon Fios. The board reserves the right to enter into executive session during all meetings of the Board of Education. Are we videotaping this?
Yeah, but not on YouTube or something.
Okay. The meeting is being videotaped for the purposes of board review, future reference, preparation of the minutes, and reviewing on Dog TV. Members of the public who attend the participation in public comment, we ask that you sign in prior to speaking. This will assist us with our record keeping. So I need to have a resolution to approve the board minutes for January 18th. It was a special meeting, January 18th, 2023.
Both.
Okay. And January 18th. The 23rd, I'm sorry. I was looking for that. Have a second. All in favor?
Got it.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Minutes are approved. So we have our student representative here with us this evening. So I'd like to welcome her to do her, Miss Angela. Is it Choi or Choi? Choi. Awesome. Can we
pull your mic
can
towards you.
we give her the mic there?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. As always, you're more than welcome to stay with us. If you'd like to excuse yourself, you are more than welcome to do that as well. Thank you for your report. Absolutely. Any questions also for Angela? Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you.
Angela.
I am going to pass on my report and turn it over to Dr. Therese.
So I thought it would be a good time to review our board goals with the board. We have some new folks that have joined us, and you weren't here when we established these goals at the end of August, the beginning of September. And I am not going to give you an update on those goals tonight. I just wanted to share the goals, because many of these goals you are charged in your committees to make sure that they come to fruition. So some of these things we've already checked the boxes on, but there are others that we're still working on. So I wanted to go over that. And then we'll give you a timeline and we'll give you an update on all of the progress we've made this year, here in April. These were the goals that we set, the categories, the themes of the goals we set for this 22-23 school year. One was to revise our mission statement, which is on the back wall. You'll also see it on the next slide. We have a broad one that says equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we'll talk about the particulars of that. Student and staff wellness, teaching to mastery, meaning the focus on the learning and not so much the grading. So you'll see some goals in that area. You see some for safety and security. Sustainability in our green efforts is a long-standing thematic goal that we have. And then finally, budget planning and facility maintenance for this year. Here is the mission statement. As I said, we did a survey at the very beginning of the year where we gathered folks' feedback on what they felt like their students needed by the time they left Hopewell Public Schools to be effective global citizens as they entered into the world. And to see if this is still what we believe, or did we need to strengthen this statement. We have those survey results, which I've reviewed with the board. Now I'm going around and meeting with focus groups. I've started with the elementary schools, and it's very interesting to hear their perspective as opposed to the adult perspective. I found that self-control they keep going to. That if self-control is very important, and that was one of the lowest rates that came from kids' house. They were like, with all the things that are going on in the world, I think you kind of need that. So it's been really interesting to go talk to the kiddos one-on-one and hear their perspective. At the end of this process of me talking to those focus groups of the kids, I've already met with the district parent council. I have the survey results. We're going to be able to craft something as a community relations committee that I know it was going to really reflect what our community believes. So I'm excited about how that's going to turn out. Under equity, these committees were charged with overseeing these things: personnel, education, community relations, and the social emotional learning committees. Providing professional development that expands the growth of our faculty in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That includes teaching to all learners that are in our classrooms, regardless of their race, gender, ethnicity, learning abilities, whatever their needs are, whether they're gifted and talented, whether they're quite exceptional. How do we provide those spaces for our community members and our children? Creating community forums where we educate the public in those things as well. Examining our hiring practices, and of course the fall under personnel, making sure that we're recruiting diverse populations of people to our school districts, educating students about how they can actively participate in public engagement as informed citizens. And you're hearing some of that already with Angela's presentation of those councils that exist at all grade levels, where students are impacting the way we manage and develop policies in our schools. Developing a curriculum statement with 1,200 wikis, and then also, again, revising the mission statement to be inclusive. Student and staff wellness. Coming out of the pandemic, we noticed that an increase in the need for public health supports, not just for our students, but for our staff as well. These were the items that we identified. Implementing restorative practice at the high school and the middle school, and they are indeed piloting those things. Our administrative staff is trained now, and they are actually implementing those practices at the high school and the middle school now. utilizing our workers' behavioral health counselor, and expanding the services, and she's carrying quite a load. Well, we'll share those updates with you here in April. Expanding awareness about the wellness services that students have available to them and the staff. So we have a very strong employment assistance program that HR has been managing and getting the word out on the street, and our faculty is utilizing very well, but also providing them resources, not just when they're having a mental health crisis, but how to stay healthy overall, how to take care of yourself and well-care overall. And then finally, adding opportunities for the stakeholders to give us that feedback through our survey. We send out a climate survey every year that will capture how we're doing in all of these categories. Continuing our efforts to make sure that we're teaching to mastery. So these were again, education program and policy committees will be focusing on this. We're regulating how we grade. That's something that we're very close to finishing. That all the departments have a consistent grading system, and it's sort of not different things going on in different areas. Eliminating waiting on honors and AP. We are exploring that. I don't know if we'll get there just yet, but that is something that we've been examining. Revising the homework policy will happen this year. Adding stakeholder feedback to the climate survey around our homework and our grading policies moving forward. We have some there, but making sure that we add some more to kind of capture how we're doing. And then finally, educating parents on the way that they can interact with the board in both formal and informal ways to make sure that equitable learning and community is happening. And I'm going to talk to you. We should actually add the community relations group to this, because we're going to be working on that last piece to support this group as well. District safety, security, and communication. Community informal sessions on building and cyber safety. We've already held some of those this year. We will continue to hold these, especially in light of what just recently happened in the news with cyberbullying and a young lady taking her life. It was just, we've been working on this all year with Heidi Kami and a group of pediatricians and staff, admin staff, about social media and how it's been affecting our kids' mental health and screen time, and really giving parents resources of how they navigate that with their kiddos, especially since we're giving cell phones to kids younger and younger. This is really becoming a problem with students right now and their mental health. Implementing a new communication system in our buildings and for our families, which we've done successfully. We are going to be running a district tabletop for safety and security that we'll share later. The police actually designed that for us, and then we engage in the activity so we can see where the gaps are. So we're looking forward to doing one of these. We haven't done one since before COVID hit, because we couldn't do one with the way we were hybrid. And then finally, adding opportunities for you to have that feedback on our climate survey. Our sustainable green efforts. We have quite a large green team that is up and running now, communicating and educating the public on sustainability efforts, which will take place a lot during Green Week, but it's ongoing. Taking action steps to make sure that we reduce the district's carbon footprint, and that is the charge of the ad hoc committee of the green team, and that the board will actually be sitting on, which is the next thing, in developing a strategic plan with measurable goals on how we're going to demonstrate that we're reducing our carbon footprint. And then again, the climate survey will be opportunities for the community to offer us feedback. And then finally, the last goal is, and the big goal, is the budget and maintaining our facilities. This is the one time that we come out of our smaller committees, and we are board as a whole, as we have our budget discussions with the community, offering the community many updates on the budget process. We still don't officially have our numbers yet, but we will have them hopefully in time for our our big budget meeting on the 13th, and our final adoption at the end there. And then continue to prepare for long-term and emergent facility needs associated with financing and our budget. So stay tuned. Towards the end of making sure the community has plenty of opportunities to communicate with us, outside of that 3-minute, time limit, and you're only commenting on the budget items, we thought it would be good for us to create opportunities for board president, other members of this team on topics. And the first topic, we're going to call these coffees and chat. We're going to try to have them in person. The first one will be on February 28th, and it will be school budget 101. Because the school budget, the way budgets work in school districts, public school districts, is very complex. Every time I sit through a budget presentation, I have to ask questions as it's the first time. And it's sort of the way the money is set in buckets, it can't be transferred or spent other places. Like folks say, well, why don't you just take this money and spend it here? School budgets don't sort of work that way. So this is an opportunity for folks to learn that complexity of how a school budget works. You won't have our particular numbers about the budget yet because we're still waiting for our state aid from the state. But this will give you the prep work that you will need to understand, hopefully a little better, the conversations that will take place during our work session and finally during our regular board meeting on the 13th. So that will start at 6:30 in this room on the 28th of February. I know everyone can't make in person and that you prefer the webinar, but it's really good to be able to, if you're in person, ask questions and for Bob to be able to build it. And he also looks for that he was a teacher before he was a BA. He looks for that confused face that he usually gets from me. And then he, Rosetta, do you understand? No. And then he'll explain. So we are going to take this for those who can attend and record it. We'll have our TV studio kids come film this as well. And we'll be able to put that up for you if you can't make it. And then after that, we have our regular board meeting on the 13th, which I talked about, which will be the board presentation with our numbers in it. And then finally, our regular board meeting on April 24th, we're going to recognize our educators and support people of the year. I'm going to give you a more detailed update on those goals that I just put out there for you tonight, and then we'll have our official budget hearing. So that is my update for tonight. Any questions from the board on any of that?
Thank you, Dr. Therese. We are going to go ahead with our first public comment. No? Oh, gotcha. Sorry. Okay, so we're straight now. My apologies. So we're going to have an update from Tana regarding the public hearing and special opportunity for public comment on, I'm going to skip all of that, the report on violence, vandalism, and substance abuse.
Perfect.
Skip what's on paper. Just go with what you know.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So tonight, Dan DiStefano, our Supervisor of Counseling, and then Paulette DiNardo, Director of Pupil Services, will be joining in with me as we share the Student Safety Data Systems report with you. For our newer members, this is something that we do once in the fall, and that will be the annual report, and then we do once now, usually in February or March, and that's the first half of the year. So we're about 6 months behind in how we report it. That way we have everything into the state. So I did want to share with everyone, the state has updated the forms. Isn't that nice for us? And so you'll see there are several pages, and it is several pages longer than it used to be, but it's very detailed. And so if Mr. Calavita can move to the next page. So here, hopefully is a little clearer for you, and you'll be able to see in the report. It asks, it's the Student Safety Data System, so it asks different things. So what was involved in the incident? Was there a threat? Was there a weapon use, a substance use? Were there harassment, intimidation, or bullying, things like that? Was it reported to the police? Was it a violent crime? Things of that nature. The state is very detailed. Go to the next slide. Then they ask specifics about the offender, what happened, what were the police involved, were they arrested, what type of removal, if any, consequences, things like that. You go to the next page, then it talks a little bit more about the HIB process. Was it an alleged? Was it confirmed? What took place? Those are separate forms. It's just more paperwork, but those are other things that are also submitted to the state. And then this is just kind of a summary of everything. And then it also even has victim information. And the next form is actually new. I'm going to turn it over to Paulette to just speak a little bit about the restraint and seclusion report.
Hi, everyone. So best practice, we've always had staff trained in what are considered nationally approved programs that promote safety when a child exhibits aggressive behaviors or behaviors that could cause harm to self or others. So previously to my tenure, we used crisis prevention intervention. 6 years ago, we transitioned to safety care, where I was trained as a trainer along with Dr. Demiri, who's our district behaviorist, and Miss Mickey Coakley, who's a school psychologist and also a behaviorist. We went through the training and we trained staff in safety care. The reason we transitioned to safety care, which is what we use to report and to follow the guidelines per the federal government, is that we work to de-escalate behaviors as much as we can. In the event that a student is causing self to harm or others, we may have to put our hands on the child. This training is intensive training for staff to learn how to do it so everybody is safe. Our main priority is to keep the child and others safe at all times. So this is a new piece of the reporting through, and we have to document, which we have been doing for the last 6 years. Even without this, we have a form that we use. We contact the parents immediately the day of, and we also have this on file. So now we're just reporting this information to the Department of Ed.
So that's new this year. Move forward. Keep going. So those were just the definitions that Paulette kind of spoke about. So one of the things we have to report in section B of this, which it's a multi-page, so I'm not going to just show you each page, but these are the things that we report. These are the statistics for the entire district, all right? And you can see we usually go back 3 years, but we've gone back 4 years just to give you a little bit of a pre-COVID type number. In the previous board meetings when I presented, I've shown you even before that to keep going. So you can see where we are this year. We have 0 expulsions, which is wonderful. Our in-school suspensions is at 23, and our out-of-school suspensions is at 17. So one thing that we've been working on over the last several years is we value in-school suspensions over those out-of-school suspensions. It gives more contact time. Teachers and counselors can check in with the student when they're in the office. It's not used as a free vacation and get out of school type of day. So those out-of-school suspensions are really saved for the things board policy dictates. But whenever possible, our principals are really actively trying for those in-school suspensions. And we do use a graduated system. So, you know, students might start out with detentions, things like that, and then that would build up if the more that something happens. Go to the next slide. So the next slide is by school. You can see across the top the offense name, and so those are all the things that I kind of highlighted in that first form, and then by the school down on the left. So just a few things here. When we talk about violence in our district, it is not something that would often be reported even in other districts. So what our cases of violence, when I go back and I do the detailed report, we're talking if a student threatens someone else, we list that under violence. So it's not always a physical altercation or situation like that. When we talk about substance abuse or the substances there, that does not fall under the random drug screening. So I know that that's a policy that we have, and it's a procedure that takes place at the high school. That does not show up here. The substance is truly if a student is under the possession, has possession or under the influence of a drug or alcohol, and that's where that would show up there. Weapons, we've been very fortunate, very, very few incidences of this at any point in time. This one we don't usually talk in detail about any of these things, but this was a pocket knife, and it was one of those type of situations where student realized they had it, and it was quickly addressed. It was not something that was, flourished in front of other students, and the administrators, immediately got in that situation. But we have been very, very fortunate in this district that that number remains very low, often at 0. Dan will speak a little bit more about the HIB, the confirmed versus the alleged, but we put them both there so you can see what is actually presented to the anti-bullying specialist and what is actually confirmed. Now, as Paulette was just talking about, those restraint and seclusion is included in this report. So we did have 2 situations. This typically, and I think, Paulette kind of alluded to this typically happens more at our elementaries than at our secondary level, but you can see there were 2 instances this year.
Can you spell out the HIB? What does it stand?
Harassment, intimidation, and bullying. All right, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see our trends. So this is the 4-year trends. You'll see the difference. So the first 3 columns are the total years, whereas the last column, since we're only reporting on the first half of this year from September through December, you can see where our numbers fall in place. We are seeing a little rise in certain things, and as we just discussed in personnel, the world is a very different place post-COVID, and I think that we all agree that no one suffered more than our children. And so that's really something that when Dan's going to go over a lot of the resources that we've implemented and are continuing to implement to address the different things that we're starting to see in the classrooms, in the buildings, and how to support our children coming out of the pandemic. So those are our trends that you can see there. I'm going to turn this over to Dan. He's going to speak a little bit more about those HIB and some of the resources that we have.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. First, I'm going to go through some of the programming that we have in place throughout the district. This first slide summarizes a lot of the more standing structures that we have and things that we have in place from year to year. And then there's going to be a slide for what we've been doing so far this school year and what we have planned for the rest of the school year. We are always keeping up with our ongoing ALICE school safety trainings. All staff and everybody is trained in all those policies. We had a school safety parent meeting in the fall. And included the community in that conversation, so everybody could kind of hear what we're doing to keep our buildings safe. We have school safety teams in each building that meet periodically throughout the year. Similarly, we have threat assessment teams meeting in each building throughout the year. Faculty, as per state law, is trained on HIB policy each year in each building, and that's part of our faculty meetings. And we've also have a cohort of staff having their own pets trained as air therapy dogs with attitudes in reverse. That's been going on for years in the district. We have several counselors in the district with trained therapy dogs, and it's it always adds a nice dimension to the office when we have them in the building. Safety cares. Paulette discussed that in detail, but I had never received such training before working in Hopewell, and it makes me more confident every day having that in my tool belt. I've utilized it, and it made me much more comfortable and confident working with students in some really dire situations. We have the district SEL committee planning all sorts of initiatives, strong partnerships with the Municipal Alliance and the Township Police Department. And we have a breadth of counseling services in the district. In addition to school counselors, we have full-time student assistance counselors at both Central High School and Timberlane Middle School. And this year, thanks to the board, we added a new K-12 student assistance counselor position. He works district-wide, services students in all 6 buildings, and has done a really nice job this year of digging in each building and helping students who need it the most. So a little update on what we've been doing so far this school year. Throughout the fall, we started an early implementation of the Character Strong SEL curriculum, which is something that we brought on this school year. It's a K-12 evidence-based curriculum that our counselors can utilize, but more so it's utilized every day in the classroom. It gives teachers a really good toolbox of little lessons and activities to utilize so that we can build these SEL themes into the everyday, and it's not just an SEL day here and there, but it's every day in the classroom. September and October, we recognize Suicide Prevention Month, Week of Respect, Red Ribbon Week, School Violence Awareness Week. We had a 4th and 5th grade assembly at the high school on social media safety in October, which was really powerful. I got to attend that, and it was really nice. We trained additional administrators, counselors, child study team members in our HIV policy so that they can serve as anti-bullying specialists. Continued our Parent University series with Samantha Awadala, who is our Rutgers UBHC clinician. We had our first in-person Parent University in the fall, which was really nice to connect live and in person like that. And then in December, we did our first vape take back day. Chris Felderman, our SAC at the high school, orchestrated that and did a really good job in conjunction with the Mercer Council on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction Prevention. They collected a number of devices and had even more students sign pledges to remain vape-free in their lives. And then go to the next slide. So upcoming throughout the rest of the year, we've for a while now been working with Minding Your Mind. It's a really great organization that sends young adults into school buildings to share their stories about mental health struggles, addiction, anything along those lines. Last year, the first time I had seen them present, it was via Zoom, and I think this year having them in the building in person really brought a lot, and it was a really excellent presentation that they gave to our seniors just last month. We're also going to be digging in deeper with Character Strong from here through the end of the school year. We had a faculty professional development session in January on Character Strong, and we're going to begin implementing that more and more. Signs of Suicide Prevention in grade 9 this month, and the teen mental health first aid trainings. We are working with our 11th graders in their wellness classes and health class in March. And we are also training additional staff and families throughout the next few months. I'm glad to be attending on Wednesday for a day of youth mental health first aid training. Let me see. I think Dr. Treese had mentioned the Municipal Alliance Digital Wellness Committee that's been doing a lot of good work in that area, social media safety, that sort of thing. We're going to continue that work and planning towards some different activities throughout the next few months. Principal Riley's done a great job with our black and gold team competitions at the high school, which has added a lot to the climate in the building and gotten the students involved with a lot of this work. And I think Dr. Treese had mentioned our counseling groups earlier on. We do a lot of group counseling work throughout the district based on need that presents itself in each building throughout the year.
All right, that's it. Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions from the board?
I had a couple, Hannah. Could we go back to the slide that showed the multi-year trend? Just noticing that we seem to have an uptick this year in terms of substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, does the incidence, is it somewhat random, or is this a trend that we should be concerned about?
So there were a few that were all on the same day. It was a group of students who I know that a large number of those were a group of friends that were located. But it is something that we've been talking about even on our safety committee meeting with the legalization that the laws have changed in New Jersey. It's very easy for students, and there's a lot of families who support that. So we have students, who may be participating in things that we would like them not to outside of school. And so that is something that, Dan and I know the principals have been working with Dr. Treese and are looking at. So.
No, my second question was just at the end of last year in policy, we wound up starting to have some discussions about the random screening evaluation, thoughts that it wasn't being as effective as we had hoped it had been. I was very glad to see the vape takeaway as an idea. I'm just, I'm hoping to see some other things that we're looking to, if we're changing that policy, look to see what are the mechanisms we're thinking that could be more effective. So if anyone can comment on additional things, I think that'd be great.
I think that's a lot where, we get involved with Heidi Kami and the Municipal Alliance is really getting that message out and talking about the dangers for our children of what can happen and, how it does affect them when they get involved in the different things. So I think a lot of those programs is another reason why we have the Student Assistance Counselor K-12, so that we're starting younger and it's not something that we're waiting until high school to address.
But I've looked at some of the character strong materials, and I haven't seen anything on sort of the construct of violence. How is character strong dealing with violence?
Proactively, I think, like Ms. Smith said, that's one of the tenets of it is the proactive nature of the program.
I mean the structural nature, the contextual stuff that they, there's all sorts of different aspects of social and emotional learning that they have involved. I understand, but I don't understand how those particular elements. There's three different main themes, well and wrong and whatever. Anyway, I don't see how they're functioning in the capacity of unlearning or reteaching of nonviolence.
Can I speak to
Sure.
this? So really, it's a character education curriculum. So it's focusing on different sort of perspectives, components, like building empathy, perspective taking. So it's not per se about talking about violence or weapons or things of that sort. It's more about, like Mr. DeStefano said, being proactive to identify these skills and these feelings and emotions that kids could.
I understand.
Yeah.
I do understand.
So I guess I'm not following what your question.
There are ways for people to unlearn violence, to learn behaviors, reactions, ideations that counteract the use or the automatic involvement in violence. And I'm just wondering, what does character strong have any of that, or is it basically empathy and I've looked at all the something like 9 or 10 different subcategories. But I'm just curious violence is an important part on how this thing can be successful, and how are you addressing those elements in order to essentially give kids options that they don't already have, that they haven't aren't able to use because they are.
I don't think that was the focus of the program. It was more, and you can speak.
Yeah, well, I think that that you're not. I don't know what activity that you're going to give kids to directly undo violent behavior. Violent behavior a lot of times comes from me being hurt, me not being able to communicate correctly, right? Me having other issues that feed into that. So when we did that search study, we really determined like what assets, what kind of things, what exposures do kids have, what tools do they have in their toolbox, and the more of those tools, like they have caring adults, right? They have a relationship to something beyond the school day, church, school, sport, right? That they come home every day and they have those conversations with their family over the dinner table. When we did that study, we found the more kids that had those sorts of things did less of this. So I don't know that we're ever going to find a program that has lessons specifically around that, but you do need to teach communication. You do need to teach empathy. You do need to teach what are my feelings, what am I feeling, and how do I express those feelings in a healthy way. All those things are in character strong, right? If I'm feeling sad or mad or angry, what are the good ways that I can react to that and behave, and what are the bad ways, whether I'm harming myself or I'm harming someone else. So those things are all in character strong. They're in our wellness and health and wellness curriculum, where kids actually come up with wellness plans on how do I recognize feelings that are not okay, and then how do I deal with those in a negative way and a positive way. The Mind Your Mind people come and talk about that. And these are young people, and getting to Adam's point, those things that, we can have these lessons all day, but what really impacts kids is when they have other young people sitting across from them who are their age that are talking about experiences. So there's not like one thing, like character strong is going to do it. We have layers of because we're still getting too many of these, and more than that than I'd like, right? So, I hope that.
I've done research in violence and learning violence. And I mean, if you look at basic psychological research, you know that violence is a learned behavior. And if it's a learned behavior, you can't unlearn it. So there are lots of ways, not lots, but there are some ways that you can use to counteract, help kids learn ways to not be violent, learn habits which they can put in place of the violence that they use in certain circumstances. There's modeling, there's just a number of different processes. I'm just wondering.
So I'm just going to address this as a teacher and not as a board member right now.
Are you on?
Am I? Yeah, I think so. And so I have taught this character strong for several years, and I'm not certain that I'm going to be able to answer exactly about unteaching, unlearning things, but I can talk to you about what kinds of lessons there are that you have to teach, that you don't have to teach. There's lots of options. And it's not just lessons where the teacher is up there reading a book and then discussing it afterwards. There's role playing involved, there's videos involved, there's artsy kind of things. Try to touch every type of learner there are. There's all kinds of things that go, and they kind of go with the themes. You mentioned there's themes. There's one per month, whether it's like honesty or empathy, things like that, right? And so the entire month will be dedicated to do, every day you would do a different lesson or a different activity, however you want to look at it, a different activity targeted for that particular theme for that month, right? And so the idea is that if you teach kids what these things are, how to recognize them amongst themselves and others, that they would then, like you were mentioning, having a toolbox of a ton of things. So I'm not certain that we're unteaching violence or violent behavior, but we're teaching better behavior and better character so that you have more options to communicate, more options to be able to recognize what is going on inside of you, so then you can then address it later. Does that make sense to you?
I spent the last weekend going through videos and I thought play whatever. And there's a fellow who runs the program and sent me a lot of different versions. So I've been reading them, and yet I've seen that they have about 4 or 5 or 66 videos that show me the different ways you can use. I just, like I said, I've worked in SEL for a number of years, and I know that there are ways that we can deal with violence, and I'm sure that Clay will be able to talk to me about how they are to be utilized. I think there's a lot of SEL that he hasn't included in the character song, but the program that I think is fairly strong.
Yeah.
I've read a number of articles on this.
I just want to jump in here. I think it's important to what is trying to be conveyed is there are many layers, and Character Strong is the newest tool in the toolbox. And so your question, I would assert, is unrelated to Character Strong because you're talking about violence.
We can stop this right now. I'm just interested if you were learning. My question was only, are you trying any of the learning processes? And the answer is no, you're not.
And it's not in Character Strong in the way you're speaking. So that's why I'm saying it's not.
Well, I would argue, yes, we are. We have extensive curriculum besides, in addition to Character
Right.
Strong. There's health curriculums that go pre-K to 12 that have components of what you're saying, that talk specifically about unlearned behaviors and violence, not specifically violence to yourself, to others, all the way down to relational aggression. We have counselors that are running groups in all of those areas. There's curriculum with lessons specifically designed for that. So maybe not in Character Strong, you might not see something that specifically targeted. But we do have those things happening, and we bring in outside groups like High Tops to talk about it.
We have Minding Your Mind folks talk about it. So there's layers here for all of that to address all of those things.
Behavioral control dimensions in the character strong, although not specifically tied to unlearn violence, they can be helpful to, for students who have not demonstrated any violence to realize that there are positive ways to control their emotions and behaviors. One related question I have, or maybe it's just a thought, is there a way for us to learn about like whether the curriculum actually works or not, in which ways that it can be even better implemented? I know that we're very early in the process, but what kind of surveys can we conduct from students, from teachers, and from the ones who are implementing the teacher training to gather information so we're at a better point to look back at the data and make decisions?
Yes, and I think that finding that tool, that right tool, is something that
They have.
Yes,
if
they
we're
have.
talking about Character Strong in particular, they do have already vetted surveys, but it would be all given to the parents, the students, and then the staff members. Yeah,
And we do have other tools that we already have in place, like the
Right, but
Search
this one
Institute
was-
survey, where students are self-reporting, which they're reporting higher levels of violence than this, of course, because this is just what we are seeing, right? And seeing and following that and tracking that data. Unfortunately, we have this first year after COVID, which was, that's going to be our baseline. And then hopefully we can do that more frequently now that we can administer these surveys at a wider opportunity to more students. But I think that we may have to examine how we're going to triangulate all this, right? Because it's really hard to prove that what you did over here moves something
Right.
over there, as you all know that who've done research, especially when it comes to behaviors that a lot of times are self-reported. But there are good instruments out there for that, and we're using one of them.
Yeah, because there are so many other factors contributing what we see as outcomes, and Character Strong as a curriculum, as many other good curricular, covers a multidimensional set of skills, attitude, and knowledge. So perhaps the particular focus on the unlearning violence part may not be the target here. But I'm sure if Mike has additional questions about that, maybe Rosette and other team members can compile information and to show that there are other things that are being done to address that.
Go ahead, Alan.
Sure. So, well, that's tonight's slide. So, no. That's a good slide. I wanna take this opportunity to say kudos to you guys, and not minimizing those numbers. Violence, in particular, I'd like to see it zero. Well, violence, vandalism, and weapons, I would like to see it zero. But I also have the perspective of having gone to a very good New York City public school. And I have friends whose children go to a very good New York City public school. That's a good day in the life of any of those schools. There is quite a bit of stuff being done right in the district. And I don't think you guys get kudos publicly sufficiently often, so this was a good opportunity.
And to be honest, we have a very low threshold for that. Like you said, you went to a very nice school in New York. I went to a very nice one in Las Vegas. Around the circle, the things that we're reporting as violence, they would not. That's two kids shoving in the cafeteria. That is tantamount most times to a fight in Hopewell. For anywhere else, that's not a flip on the radar. It's like break it up, go back to class. For us, that stuff gets here because we have a very low threshold for any putting up the hands on anybody, any of that. So we take that very seriously.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I've got to tell you something about myself. And why I'm a little bit concerned about my I used to work in a place called Sandyburg. they have lower numbers, and it's just these numbers are here. It's a completely non-common place. But it only takes one, this the student that they caused no problem was a special education student. He had all his services are incredible, but it only takes one source of violence that we don't really, we don't really pay attention to all the violence and try to unlearn that violence, then we're in trouble. That's my concern.
That student was also one that wasn't in the public school. He wouldn't experience any of the lessons, right? Because he was withdrawn from the public school and he was receiving a homeschool or whatever education. So that the lesson, I get what you're saying, but the lessons that we're doing, I don't think are ever going to take this number down to zero. I always believe there's going to be more that we can do, because what really drove the Sandy Hooks and some of these other things are these things right here. The bullying and the way students are being ostracized from school, and then they're not in school, and there's mental health issues, and we know that they need help, and there's really no resources out there, and parents get frustrated and struggle with that, and then those are the students that come out. Almost every one of those students you can track extensive cases of bullying. So I agree we have to work up there, and even more so, we have to figure out down here. We have to figure this out.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that we're always looking for something that's can't put it right out there.
Absolutely.
I think we all got to hold ourselves accountable. We appreciate this challenging us. We all got to hold ourselves accountable to all of this, because that's what leads to what we do.
And that's a priority of all this work that we're doing. That's why, these HIB unconfirmed and confirmed numbers you see here are higher than you'll see in some other districts, because we take any allegation that comes in so seriously. You see what happened at another high school just in the state last week, and a student loss of life as a result of that. And, we want to make sure that every student feels seen. If there's any allegation, that they feel validated. It might not end up being confirmed as a HIB, because the state has a really narrow definition of what they consider a HIB. But we investigate everything. We want everything to be reported, and we do our best to investigate everything fully, and to pay the utmost attention to any acts of violence, like you said, and what's the root of it, and how can we get to the bottom of it. Exactly. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, Mark.
So please remember, 2021 was a COVID year, and 21-22 we were still coming back in that hybrid sort of situation at the beginning. So you really need to look at the 19-20 year, which we still had 3 months in COVID. So that's a little bit more. Those out-of-school suspensions typically go along with the drug and alcohol use. Yep.
And with the drug and alcohol, those are mandated, automatic out-of-school suspensions, with the code. But what we usually do is we blend that with the in-school, so the kids are not out the whole time. For some districts, will be very draconian and say 10 days out. We try not to.
And this is district-wide. I don't want you to get in your, like, this isn't just the high school, or this is the entire district.
There's lots of things that go on with that. It doesn't mean that they didn't get a consequence, because you could do something pretty horrible to someone else and it not be a violation of the harassment, intimidation, or bullying law, right? Because that's specific about protected class. They said something to you because of your ethnicity, because of a distinguishing characteristic about you. That there's a power imbalance, like if a senior beats up on a sixth grader or something, or being cruel to someone. A bunch of girls teaming up on social media and then harassing someone. That has to be confirmed very specific. But you can still be
It's really important to understand unconfirmed does not equal case dismissed. It does not equal not guilty. It's very much not the case, and there's still action steps put in place, whether it's founded or unfounded.
And a lot of times those things would have taken place before this report is finished. This is really about us tracking how good a job we're doing at reducing the number of.
Can I ask a quick question? First of all, thank you. This is such a great presentation. And I noticed in here you're doing a lot to raise awareness. And so just to make a comment about the trends, like we would expect the numbers to go up as we raise awareness, right? And so like that seems completely natural to me that we would see a jump in the numbers because people are reporting more. And so can you just talk a little bit more about like how much of this do you think is like awareness raising, expecting the numbers to jump up versus, you know, you talked about social media and being in a different environment post-pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the big variance is from 2021 to 21-22 that you see there, because 2021 was the most impacted by COVID. You know, the most time spent out of the classroom, out of the school buildings. Then we came back to school last year in 21-22, and that's where the numbers jumped up so much. And I think teachers, I think everybody would agree that the kids were just off coming back to school. And you know, I sit in my home for too long, I forget how to interact with other people, right? I think kids sat in their homes for too long, you know, only interacting with peers on their phones, and they forgot the right way to interact, and they came back to school last year, and it was, I mean, our anti-bullying coordinators are all counselors, and they didn't have much time to counsel because they were all investigating these cases. As you can see from the numbers this year, I think that's corrected itself to a large degree, and I think that's a testament to the hard work everybody's doing with our kids. And those numbers are coming back in line with pre-COVID a little bit more. But yeah, that's what I would pin it on the most, is the time students spent at home and then coming back into the building and reacclimating to society.
A lot of, when you read through these cases, it's unconfirmed, it's a lot of conflict that's going on. And then it escalates to the point where somebody accuses someone else of bullying. But when you dig down into it, it's like layers of this argument, or, you know, them being unkind to each other, usually online, that escalates into one of these. So what I do like about, you know, you have to keep our counselors busy, but it brings that out. And then they're able to get through that relationship.
And I think that just goes to why it's so important that we're implementing a character strong type of curriculum and really reinforcing that in every classroom and every school that we have. Is this is how you interact, this is how you deal with, you know, a conflict, a problem, how you talk about your emotions, because to Dan's point, they didn't really have that for so long when they were home, and that was such a growing period for students. So coming back, it is so important.
And this kind of conversation is the focus of what our school safety teams in each building do that I mentioned. That's a state mandated kind of apparatus in the schools, but they analyze the trends in these HIBs within the building from year to year. Where in the building are they happening? What time of day are they happening? Which groups of students are involved? And kind of like analyzing ways to, you know, correct things.
Any other questions? Great discussion. Thank you. And thanks for all the hard work that you and the team are doing.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that is very exciting with Character Strong, I feel like we're putting a lot of attention on it because it's new, but it's rare that you have a K through 12 program, and over time, the hope is the language continues to resonate with them, and you know, it's kind of planting seeds, and you know, or siblings can use the same language. They might be in two different schools. I think there's a lot of benefits to having a K through 12 program in this regard. So great work. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and transition to our first public comment, specifically on the report that was just shared. So members of the public are invited to address the board on specifically this report, for a maximum of 3 minutes during this portion of the meeting. You're asked to state your name, address, and municipality. In response to your comments, the Board of Education may respond or direct the superintendent to do so. The board may also opt to take the matter up at a future meeting so that the matter is researched by the district administration. Public comments are now open. When you cross your legs again, that's a sure sign you're not getting up.
I have things, but
I got you. I got you. All right, public comments are closed. So, okay. So we need a motion and a second on the report that was just shared. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Resolution passed. Okay, so we now have a regular public comment where the members of the public are invited to address the board on any matter for a maximum of 3 minutes during this portion of the meeting. You're asked to state your name, address, and municipality. In response to your comments, the Board of Education may respond or direct the superintendent to do so. The board may also opt to take the matter up at a future meeting so that the matter is researched by the district administration. Public comment is now open. Seeing no one, public comments closed. Oh, so just checking to see if we have any old business items to address. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to the consent agenda. Those are items on your agenda that are marked with an asterisk. And I need a motion and a second for to move the consent items.
Before that, Anita, I would like to have a discussion on M5.
M5.
If we could pull M5.
Do you want to? Go ahead after. Okay. Okay. With the exception of M5, I need a motion and second to move the consent items.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. Can we go straight to M5? Fine. Finance. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's check. I don't think we have. Yes, everything on our list is on consent, still on consent. So we had a meeting last Monday. It was actually a 2-hour meeting, which was a little bit long for us, but we had a lot to discuss, and if anything, was in preparation for the board meeting afterward. But the first thing was we discussed the status of the annual financial report, our audit. It's not complete yet, but we had representatives from our auditor come and give us a summary. Essentially, we're still waiting. Bob, I think we're still waiting from one little last bit of information from the state.
We're waiting for a footnote on pension obligations. So once the state gets their act together and gives us that footnote, we can close our audit.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Like, one thing to note was that in the last couple of years with COVID, much of the work in the audit was actually done remotely. This year, 90% of the audit was conducted in person, so that I think is a welcome change. It seemed to have gone well. Overall, the findings of the audit were very positive. We had 3 minor findings noted. One related to having our employees who work under ESSER grant monies approved formally by the board before they start. A second related to school lunch vendor. It was one of those cases where for particular actions, they were under the quote threshold, but in aggregate, the amount of work done was under a quote threshold, and strictly per the requirements, they needed to have a quote for that. And then there was one thing where a student activities deposit was a little bit, took longer than we prefer. So overall, we agreed with the auditors that these were small items. The key thing coming from this is that for the 10th year running, Mr. Colavita and the district were recognized by the ASBO International Certificate in Excellence in Financial Reporting. This only goes out to a couple of districts in the state every year, and they've gotten it 10 years running. So I think it attests to how well they're running.
Thank you.
Okay. Second thing we did was we had a presentation on utilization, enrollment, and capacity based upon the SLAM demographic report, which was shared with the Township Committee recently. We went through the highlights of that. We went through a graphical representation of the utilization of our classrooms and other facilities within our 6 academic buildings. The key takeaway is just based on the projections, our greatest growth is going to wind up being in the Bear Tavern sending area. So we had discussions about what that means and what are some approaches we should be exploring and looking at to address those additional instructional space needs.
And just to comment on that, we'll be rolling that out with the full board at a later date, so you can all hear from the architect and ask questions of your own as we get further along in the process. But we wanted to start with finance facilities first.
Okay. And then lastly, we had a discussion on our facilities. As we discussed last week, focus for capital projects for next year will be the Hopewell Elementary boiler and chiller replacement, the fire alarm replacement at Stony Brook, and the electrical room safety improvements at Toby. So
Yeah,
and
and
we went through some additional ones in the following years.
the second 2 projects are actually being submitted for what's called a ROD grant, regular operating district grant, that could fund the project somewhere in the area of 40% if approved. Now, the submissions aren't due to the state until the 30th of May. They have 90 days to make the decision, so obviously we aren't going to be able to do that this summer. But hopefully on the horizon we'll get funding for that, and it will cost the board 40% less.
That's what I have. So thank you.
Go ahead, Al.
If you want the money, you wait. We asked that question too, and we said we have projects that are already in the pipeline that they're very specific on what qualifies, and it's safety and security, HVAC are at the top of the list. Obviously, these are HVAC projects, and they said there are no projects. If you start, if you've already gone to bid and you have not yet started, you're out. But remember, they're not. It's going to take. They have till May 30th to accept them, and then they have 90 days to approve or disapprove. And there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of projects submitted, and they have to rank them and determine who gets what. So everything we submit may or may not qualify, and even if it does qualify, we could be pushed down because somebody else's project is deemed more important. So and there's not much money. I think it's $300 million that's going around. So we submitted what we thought were slam dunks. We didn't want to go and submit projects that were in the $20-30 million range because we figured they're going to pass money around based upon the same way they pass state aid around. We're considered a wealthy district, so the projects we get, we're not sure how they're going to balance it. They have not said. So we're hoping that we get some money towards extending our capital reserve. We've submitted, I think we're going to submit 5 or 6 different projects all related to HVAC work. So, what's that? I don't have a total. off the top of my head. They're not all finalized yet. So, let's hope we get something.
Okay. Anything else, Adam? You all done? Okay. Sorry. All right. Thank you for the report. Can we go to personnel? Oh, I'm sorry. We need a motion for. Wow. Okay. Oh, because you have, yeah, you have a long list of items on yours. Yes. So a motion and a second for the items under personnel. All right. All in favor? Oh, roll. Oh, okay. Got it. Note to self.
Actually, the first one with our new members. So we went over, the norms and the expectations. We also went over the goals, general goals for personnel and HR are. And then tonight, I guess you'll see on we also discussed per diem rates, just so you know. But tonight you will see on the board agenda that there were 3 retirements that were announced. Kelly Stingle, is that how you spell it? Kelly Stingle, the teacher of students with disabilities at Fairhaven Elementary School. The retirement of Kelly Ionicone, who is the STEM teacher at Timberlane, and the retirement of Pamela Vaquero, who is the school nurse at Fairhaven Elementary. You'll also see a variety of appointments, whether it's a bus driver or a long-term sub. There's a few of those, and there's quite a few adjustments to salaries based on the approval of negotiations. So that's what we'll be taking a roll call on this evening. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything? I think we got it all. Right? Okay. Yeah, so I guess we need a roll call.
Dr. Genovese.
Yeah.
Dr. Lilliston. Dr. Liu. Mr. Peters. Dr. Resnick. Mr. Sawicki.
Yes.
Dr. Wilson. Ms. Driver. Ms. Williams-Galliano.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We are going to move on. Very long. Sorry. Education. Okay. Or, oh, yes. To my right or to my left?
So we met last Wednesday, I think it was, via Zoom, and we actually also had a lengthy meeting with very good discussion, I might add, where we talked about the gifted and talented programming, some updates and some changes that need to be made to make sure that we get, we're addressing all of our learners. We also had a presentation by Dr. Ngweni and Mrs. Rebecca about the biology and genetics, I think it was called, programming that they're doing. Fascinating stuff, and I was super impressed with some of the realizations that kids were coming to when it came to similarities and differences amongst people based on their genetics, and some misconceptions that we all have had, and so I was pretty impressed, and I look for more information coming from them about that. And we also reviewed some field trips, and I think that was it. Did I miss anything? No, I think that was it. All interesting stuff. We actually kind of were like caught up in this conversation that lasted way more than our typical time, but it was all well worth it. Good discussion.
Hi. We also met last Wednesday and had some new members on our committee. And me, as the new chair and new to the committee, we had a discussion about what the goals of the committee were in conjunction with our mission statement and the strategic goal of the district. We discussed the communication plan and making sure that our communications, as Dr. Treese stated earlier, that we're very relevant, hence our coffee and chats about the budget, and that we're being responsive and transparent with our community are very important to this board. We talked about committee members' roles as direct lines to the community, and that how we can help, with being that direct line and having the community come to us, and also looking online. A lot of times our community loves to have conversations online. How we can help with branding and really getting out what wonderful things are happening with the school district to everyone. And then we discussed the importance of our goal from our district goals, which is to educate students in the community about active participation in public civic engagement in an informed, committed, and civil manner with a focus on the common good, which I think feeds right back into Character Strong. And those were the main things that we did. Look here. Our sort of recommendations were the coffee chats and doing the budget primer. And our primary goal for this year is the communication plan. So that was our community. SEL. And I'm up again. And I'd like to thank Dan. He pretty much covered most of what was in my notes. I know, really well coordinated there. Once again, we had several new members, so we talked about what the SEL committee does and what we have done in the past. We talked about the new Character Strong, and I'm not going to go into that because we had a great, robust conversation about that. How it ties into the one thing we didn't mention is our Ready for Rigor framework and also our Nurtured Heart. So 2 other programs that Character Strong feeds into very nicely. So building upon all this previous work that we have been doing. We talked about that. We talked about several staff members going and attending the Character Strong professional development, which really gave them the confidence and excitement to sort of help roll this out. Paulette also talked about how Jamie and Andy, who are representatives from the high school, they did a PD day also, and we know how difficult it can be to roll these sort of programs out at the high school level. Our high school teachers are so busy, especially with the AP and the honors courses and making sure, but they got a really great sort of response from that PD, so that's fantastic. We will be reporting out in our April meeting about the mental health first aid that we also heard about previously, just to talk about the number of teachers, administrators, community members trained with that. And then really for our recommendations that came out, we talked about how our juniors are going to be trained in the mental health first aid, and that just getting a letter out to parents so that they are aware that that is happening, so that we're sensitive to any juniors and they're forewarned with that. And I think that was it. Did I miss? No. Questions? Anyone?
Excellent. Thank you for both of those reports. We'll move on to policy, but I need to have a motion and second.
Okay, so what we have up for first reading tonight is policy 8561, procurement practices for school nutrition programs. This is very typical of a policy update you'll see, which is mandated by the state. And it actually falls very well with regard to what we mentioned with regard to the audit, because a major focus of this policy update is providing specific procedures for bidding for different aspects of supporting school nutrition programs in terms of supplying equipment, repair services, etc. And it details out bid thresholds, method of procurement, requirements in terms of the contract awards, etc. So in order for us to help us maintain compliance with those processes, we need to go ahead and update our policy to reflect what the state requires. So policy committee is recommending an acceptance for first reading of this revised policy.
Okay, just a little more clarification. The reason why this is necessary is because federal procurement, which is what the food service program is managed by, federal dollars, and state procedures differ somewhat. So this kind of streamlines the process and it indicates where there's a difference between federal and state. State is actually much more rigid, believe it or not. Voice vote.
So all those,
For new board members, when we do policy, the first reading of all policies are a voice vote, and second readings are a roll call vote. So this is a first reading, which means next month you'll see this policy come up again in case something comes up and you want to change it. Sometimes if there's a controversial policy, there may be changes between first and second reading.
And that's why we show you the markup in it. So, because as a board, you're agreeing to all of those changes. So, this would be an opportunity. If there were some issues with something, specifically something that's controversial, then we can discuss that and maybe make those changes. Some of these changes we cannot take out because they're being mandated, right? But there are other ones that we can.
You might ask, why do we do two readings? Transparency. It's so that a board doesn't come in and say, again, controversial. If they came in and did something controversial and they did it all in one night without the public's response, without the board's consideration of thinking about it, time to weigh things through. So, again, it just gives the public a way to know that we're doing things, we're doing it systematically with a process, and giving folks a chance to comment.
all right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. First reading pass. Okay, so for routine information items, they're all, yes. Thank you. They are all on consent with the exception of the one we pulled off, which is M5.
Yeah, and I was just going to comment that
Oh, I'm sorry, motion and second?
I just asked for this to be pulled off just because I was surprised this time when I looked at it. We had 2 elementary school student suspensions, if anything, very young elementary school student suspensions. And from our conversation earlier today with regard to the HIB report and such, it got me thinking. I think there's good rationale for the fact that the infractions were serious. It helps provide the rationale. But my question mainly relates to, we talked about in-school versus out-of-school. Were these in-school or out-of-school suspensions? And the thing is, I imagine for a very young elementary student, that decision takes a bit of a different type of flavor compared to what you have for a middle school or high school student. So, if anything, I was interested to learn what went into that decision. Do we have a standard practice if we do wind up deciding to suspend a student?
Is that standard practice, and it is actually code, and there's legislation around it. So when you're suspending someone this young, anyone pre-K to 5, there really has to be a risk to themselves and others to that point where it's beyond what you think that you can contain in that right now.
follow on from that, would we ever consider doing a in-school suspension?
Oh, we
or
do
something
in-school
like that?
as well. With little ones. Yeah, absolutely. And that was that number. It was, even if they're, say, something happened at lunch, and then the rest of the day they were in your office, that's the in-school suspension.
Okay.
That's no longer a timeout. And it would show it. Absolutely.
No,
And that's what we prefer to do. But
Okay.
if you can see what the first one was, that was beyond the in-school for that day.
No, thank you very much.
Actually, I can I follow up on that? Thanks, Adam, for opening up that door. Because I don't remember. With the drug and alcohol violation, with that being the 10 days, is that state mandated or is that our board
We have some
policy?
leeway on it, but I think it's in the policy. It's like, I don't think we do 10 days for under the influence, but if they have it, the actual substance in school, that one is automatic. 10 days.
Okay.
Well, we have some leeway with that. We don't put them out of school.
Okay. Okay.
Way to go, Adam.
There's actually a space where teachers have duties and students are there doing the work and teachers are able to check in and they're meeting with the SAC if it's drug related, or they're meeting with their counselor to try to prevent this from happening again. And the teachers are actually checking in with them. That's why we prefer them in.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Okay. We'll move on to board calendars. Motion and second, please.
Little bit concerned about the cycles that we're going to have before
I don't know what you would discuss. I mean, we're working towards. We won't have state aid figures till the 2nd of March. We're gonna have it. We figured we would work through what we have to work. We've been working through it today. We'll work to go in tomorrow. We'll start to tie it together. I'll have a majority of a budget that last week in February, waiting for final numbers on the 2nd of March, and we'll discuss it on the 6th.
So you're saying add another one between the 6th and the 13th?
Well, and that's what where I was going. I'm anticipating. Right, you're going to have some proposals about how it works. At least some of them. I'm anticipating we're not going to get enough aid.
We're gonna come on the 6th with a budget, a balanced budget. That's my plan.
Right, but in order to balance that budget, you're going to have to propose some.
Mhm. Right.
And what my concern is you're going to make some proposals and we're going to go, that doesn't actually work for us. Right, that's not acceptable. Right, then you only have a week to go back and figure out some alternatives. And that's the concern.
Yeah, all this echo a similar sentiment there. Just from the dialogue that I engaged with some of the committees around that. I have some trepidation
Yeah, I mean, you can have that meeting and then see what happens after that meeting. You can discuss things on the 13th. The budget's due on the 20th. So, you know, I would like to have
We
it
have a little bit of a leeway.
very little.
Yeah. Because I'm saying,
But you make the call at that point.
No, we're gonna figure it out. Remember, this is only a tentative budget. The final budget is in April. So changes can be made between March 20th and April 24th as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The tentative budget does need to be approved so that you can submit it to the county commissioner on the
Yep.
So there is an approval process there, and I'm imagining, and I believe Jeremy that while you can make changes, right, making drastic changes to something that the county commissioner has looked at and said, okay, that works, is going to create some
They're looking for it as
you
on
kind of want to be almost there when you submit it to the county commission.
but changes are made. People make changes.
so looking at the calendar, we have a work session on the 6th. Do you want to schedule another one that week? Or the other choice would be, you can schedule one after the 13th if you feel like you need it. Then we can put it in now, pick a date, and if we don't need it, we don't. Okay, so
And maybe that
it's just a
sounds
matter of,
like a
right.
like a more reasonable approach to have a date afterwards, which gives public enough notice to communicate to the public a month. No, notice, right? And then
48
cancel
hours.
it if we don't need it right after that.
Public needs 48 hours notice.
Really?
That's why we were saying if you make the, that's why we're saying we could schedule it that, on the
I
6th.
still like
if-
the idea, if it's not due till the 20th, right, I like.
But there's things that need to be done. When the board approves it on the 13th, there's mechanics that need to be done, and it takes time to do that. So that's why I leave myself the week to do it.
So how late could we do another meeting, Bob, if we need to do it? And giving you the time that you need.
I mean, the latest would be the 15th.
Yeah.
I guess that's the question. Can we just have a commitment that if based upon the 6th and any feedback we get, we can elongate the discussion back again on the 13th?
Right.
It makes more sense just have a long 13
Yeah, just
meeting and get
hash
along.
it out.
If we only,
It would actually make sense to just have a long meeting on the 6th if you need it. I mean,
Bob, I did have one question for you on, if we do finance, I think we should do finance and facilities before the meeting on the 6th.
Right.
One thing I was going to ask you is this the month where we'll do our, going through the quarterly reports?
Mhm.
Okay, because I think that's going to be something that's very important leading into that discussion, because it'd be helpful to have the finance and facilities members up to date on how our trends have been going in our like key areas this year, so we understand how that fed into the projections for the next year's budget.
so you know, your concern is addressed by having a longer meeting on the 6th, and
Not fully addressed.
well,
It doesn't seem like, look, again, I think
wouldn't call it paranoid.
You have to vote for something before the 20th. You have to. Budget is due the 20th. It's going in on the 20th. It has to go in on the 20th. You don't want it not to go in on the 20th. It never not going in on the 20th.
Well, that's what
As a school district, we have to turn
You have to turn in a budget.
Yeah.
You'd be in violation of state law.
Now
It's not good.
yeah.
He did say, though, that if you're really unhappy between then and the 24th, we can make changes.
And it's not to say that either on the 6th or the 13th, the board can't decide to give direction to make a modification to the plan that's
Right.
proposed. Yeah.
Right, it's just in a situation we were in last year, first of all, there wasn't anything that concerned me, but we didn't have a sizable hole on top of the floor. Correct. We work with close holes. You have to make some very tough trade-offs. Bob's pretty good at evaluating which trade-offs are gonna
Remember, this is a team effort. We're working as a group with the budget manager. So
but at the end of the day, you're taking a guess at what's going to work.
right, that's what a budget is. It's a best guess.
And that's what the risk is.
Say, well,
right,
let's
is
try.
whenever you take a guess, there's a chance that you get storm.
Yeah, well, see, we're not trying to satisfy the board, we're trying to satisfy this, right? So the decisions and the proposal that we bring are gonna be, these are the programs that you say as a district you value. These are the kiddos that we are supporting. These are what we believe in. This is what we're recommending as an administrative team because it's what's best for kids. It may not be what's necessarily comfortable for all of us here, the decisions we make, but it's gonna be, how do we maintain our special education program for our most vulnerable kids in the district? How do we not decimate the programs that attract people to this district? And how do we balance that budget? So that's how we're coming to.
But you can ask me to vote on whether I think you make the trade-offs that make
Yes.
sense, right?
That's true.
And my concern is, again, I'm going to see them once on the 6th, right? And hopefully we're going to be almost there, right? But if there's a big gap between what me or other members may feel, right, that not the best trade-off, then there's not a lot of time to go around. And that, if we can still make major changes through April, that makes the process simpler, right? But because now there is a lot more time to go through, right? To me, it sounded like it's called tentative approval, but because it goes to the commissioner on education, it's not so tentative.
So the commissioner's looking for, again, they're looking for mechanics. So there's a lot of the budget software is 60 some odd different pages that have to all tie in and put together. They're looking for that. If the board decides between May 20th or March 20th and April 24th that there's a program that they wanted to cut instead of adding this, you can make changes. You just have to provide rationale for it. And it's done all the time. Boards of education make changes in that month all the time. And we've done it in the past here. We've made changes.
Oh, yeah. There have been several
Okay, so
times in
that-
the past
so
where
that
you know,
actually that alleviates my concerns that we're going to have that space of time.
We believe that we're going to bring a tentative budget to the board on the 6th for discussion that you will be happy with. We, again, Dr. Treese mentioned it. We are not looking to do anything to harm our program. In the 2 days that we've done meeting on this, we found significant savings when puts pressure, not pressure, but when we put it back to the budget manager to say, do we need this? Do we need that? We've gotten we can put that off, or we can do it in a different way. So we are pretty well on our way to getting there.
And I have
And understood, but we understand where you guys are as a group.
And you're also sitting on the committee, the finance committee, so you will have other times.
But the committee itself will also be wants prior to that, and the reality of it, right, the budget is a committee of the whole. Right, it's not just, I just let the whole.
And understand that a lot of the work that we've been doing all year has been kind of prepared for this moment. So it really isn't just the one meeting. Every month, one of the departments who spends these large chunks of money has presented, this is what Di's been in pupil services, in transportation, in Venice. That was all prepared for this point. So that when we look at this budget, this piece of the budget, it's, folks have sort of the inner workings of how all those departments work and how that spending happens. So that when we make these decisions, it's hopefully not done in isolation like this is the one meeting. We've been talking about it all along with how we're developing curriculum instruction, and even personnel talking about these are the salaries. So all those things we have to keep in mind as we approach the budget, that all those nuts and bolts are pieces of this puzzle. It's not going to be.
Mark?
We'll do what we need to do with it.
Awesome. Great discussion. Thank you. All right, so we have
We got
calendars.
Finance,
We need to go back to calendars.
we got finance facilities on the 6th. That's 5 o'clock. I think SEL's already set. March 9th. Okay, so you're moving that one. Oh, she did January.
Yes, yeah.
I can't stack SEL and community relations this time because I'm actually out at a conference all that week, so I'll pop out and take this, and I'll have to. Oh well, where's Zoom anyway?
10th, 8th at 10. Policy's the 13th at 6:15 standard. Or not policy, personnel. Adam, when did you want to do policy?
Yeah, this is the thing. Was that normally like Friday mornings work pretty well for me? I just didn't know what date you were looking for. The problem I have is like March 2nd and even the prior Friday are problematic.
The 3rd work for you, Adam?
Well, that's what I was saying.
Oh, the Friday.
That
The 10th, we usually don't like to do it that close to the
that would definitely work for me, but as long as that's okay.
And we want to do it the same time in the morning. Does that work for everyone?
What time?
I think normally we meet at like 8 o'clock.
Is that okay?
Yep.
What do you have?
The 9th.
And comm relay. Community relations.
get everything? All right. Yay. All those in favor? Oh. Are we good? Oh, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. Calendar's done. Move on to new business. Any new business items? Okay. We'll move on to our final public comment. All right, members of the public are invited to address the board on any matter for a maximum of 3 minutes during this portion of the meeting. You're asked to state your name, address, and municipality. In response to your comments, the Board of Education may respond or direct the superintendent to do so. The board may also opt to take the matter up at a future meeting so that the matter is researched by the district administration. Public comments are now open.
So, Kate Ham, Hopewell Township. Hearing a lot of discussion here about March 6th, though it's not on a district calendar anywhere. So I'm wondering if you can shed some light. It sounds like it's a work session, but there are other work session meetings already listed on the district calendar and the district website. So in full honesty and transparency to the community, I would like to see that meeting added to the district website and calendar. That's not what I was going to speak about initially, but I then want to thank, although Mr. DiStefano is not here any longer, the comprehensive presentation earlier in this meeting provided insight on known and reported violations. While I understand that you cannot act on what you don't know, it's important to acknowledge that incidents are not reported for various reasons. How are students encouraged to feel safe in their environment and report such infractions? In addition, I'm wondering if all of the information shared is solely on students or if there is any staff portion of those numbers. Lastly, upon seeing that large number in suspensions, both in and out, is there a blueprint for addressing the infractions and how those individuals return to the school building if that is the decision? For example, a student returns and brags about why they were out, causing concern to other students about interacting with them or having knowledge or being fearful of them. So those are my questions. Thank you.
There we go. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to make sure if there's any more other comments first.
Thank you. Any other public? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, we do a report on adult concerns also, right? They should be in there. If we had any harassment, intimidation, and bullying reports with staff and all of that, that's reported as well. Any cases that involve any of those things. We do have meetings and updates with the students on what harassment, intimidation, and bullying is, what's the difference between that and conflict, and how you report and get help in either of those cases. And usually we will see a spike after we do those, and I do remind my principals and vice principals to send that information home. So after they've had those talks, send that information home with families as well. This year I tried to do a better job of getting that information to the parents and caregivers. So we created a video with me and Mr. DiStefano talking about the bullying law, what's the difference between that and conflict, and how to get help in all those areas. And just try to encourage kids to report. I think kids report more than they used to because we do a lot of education around that, and we also encourage parents to reach out as well. A good number of these cases are reported by parents that run into these things, and then they report. Because sometimes kids think it's going to get worse if they report it. Most times it does not get worse. It stops because we do have conversations with kids after something's reported. If this continues after this is what's going to happen. And this is how things are going to get worse, even during the investigation. In terms of kids bragging after they return, we have conversations with the kids and the caregivers before they come back to school. We have reentry conferences. We have our expectations around that. When that occurs, The kids may not know about it, but those kids are brought back in for more conversations, and there could be additional consequences. So we do try to capture that as much as possible, knowing we can't get all of it. But we do understand that that's something that we have to follow up with students, and we do. I think I covered all of them. Okay, thank you. And if I didn't, please reach back out, because I might have missed one. Oh, March 6th. I don't know why that's not on there. We'll make sure it's on there, because you didn't see it either. Yes. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Right. We're going to go ahead and close public comment and address those. And we're going to officially move into executive session. And okay. And do I read that? Okay. Okay, we're going into closed session to discuss harassment, intimidation, and bullying matters. No action will be taken. Can I have a motion? Second? Okay. Voice, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain or opposed?